Emily, are you disrespecting me? With my earnings, we have more than enough, yet you engage in working. You should be keeping the household budget and just doing the housework. John, with a budget note in his right hand and a beer bottle in the left, came at me, seeming like he might hit me at any moment. A slight provocation could lead to anything. In that situation, I placed my smartphone in front of the computer, slowly lifted the corners of my mouth into a smirk, and calmly began to speak. Are you sure you should be saying that? You're done for. Right after, cold beer poured down my head. I stared blankly at the dripping drops. John, holding the beer bottle upside down, said this. How's that? Cool your head, haven't you? You act all high and mighty. Slaves should quickly prepare dinner. John was smirking menacingly, exerting pressure on me. But I wasn't shocked by this. Because everything was expected. I was already prepared to bring him down to hell. Shivering with my body wet from the beer, I took the smartphone placed in front of the computer. Now it's your turn to tremble. Look at this. What, you're commanding me now? I'm exhausted from work. I don't have time to play along with your hobby. John, grumbling, looked into the smartphone and suddenly turned pale, starting to tremble. What appeared on the smartphone was the furious face of my father. John still held the beer bottle, and I was completely soaked. Surely, my father could clearly see us. Hey, what's all this? Why is he here? I told you, I was working. What I want to know is why your father is appearing on the smartphone. I decided it was time to patiently explain to my clueless husband. That's because I was asked to help with my father's company work from home. I was working while on a video call with Dad. What? You never mentioned such a thing. You hid something so crucial. I was completely unaware. This is bad, being seen by him like this. John was complaining with his voice, but he was cut off by my father's angry shout. Hey, John. Is there anything else you wish to say? Hearing the clearly angry voice of my father made John shrink. No, it's not like that. This was just a minor marital argument. I returned home exhausted from work, and Emily had prepared nothing for dinner. I just thought she should show some consciousness as a housewife. You intimidate your wife over a minor marital argument and drench her with beer? My father's voice was low and filled with irony. John continued his excuses in a hurry. It was just an accident. It wasn't intentional. I simply slipped, and the beer ended up on Emily. My bad, Emily. Here, take this towel. You need to dry off, or you'll catch a cold. Trying to appeal to my father, John played the good guy. Ignoring such a husband, my father began to scold him. Stop with the pitiful excuses. I clearly saw you intentionally pour beer on Emily and call her a slave. John finally stopped his excuses and hung his head. Seeing this, my father appeared disappointed and started talking about John. Who do you think enabled you to climb to your current position at the company? It's thanks to the dealings I arranged for you with our company, right? It seems you've forgotten that kindness. It was hard to believe that this person, who had been lording it over me until now, had shrunk so much. Well, it seems you're also doing well at your company, achieving good results. I've heard rumors because some of my relatives are being looked after in your company. You're well trusted by your boss and beloved by your subordinates. You're expected to have a future. So, I've been trusting you as well. After saying that, my father sighed deeply. That sigh meant disappointment, but John seemed to misunderstand it as a compliment. Though previously downcast, he now lifted his head, displaying a proud expression. That's right. It's all thanks to you. Thanks to the business dealings with your company, my sales performance has been top-notch. I'm being eyed by my boss as a future executive. Boy, am I lucky to have such an outstanding partner. Just when it mattered, my husband began desperately buttering up. But my father, unimpressed by such flattery, remained silent. Feeling confident again, my husband continued. I've managed to push myself this far because I married Emily. No matter how tired I am from work, when I come home, Emily has a warm meal waiting for me. Just thinking about that makes all the fatigue vanish. That's why I wanted Emily to be a stay-at-home wife. It's precisely because there's a housewife who perfectly handles the housework and takes care of me that a man can give his all outside. He seemed unstoppable once he started talking. Astounding, the way he lines up such convenient lies. In return, I don't want Emily to face any financial difficulties. Since I earn enough, there's no need for Emily to work. She should just stay home, do the housework, and wait for my return. Yet Emily didn't rely on me and started working instead. I felt a bit of loneliness because Emily didn't depend on me, so I ended up raising my voice in anger. Hearing my husband's strained excuses, my father didn't look convinced. Instead, he became even angrier. Excuses are the only thing you're good at, huh? Just like a top-class salesman. I must have been deceived by you until now. However, the world isn't so sweet that such excuses will always work. The plating wears off eventually. If you have anything else to say, I'll listen later. I'm coming over right now, so get ready. With those stern words, my father hung up the phone unilaterally. Immediately afterward, my husband turned back to me. His eyes were glittering with anger. Pulling a stunt like this. Listen, you tell your father that you were all wrong and explain yourself. My husband threw the beer bottle he was holding onto the floor. Immediately after, a loud crash as the beer bottle shattered across the floor. It's unpredictable what an angry husband might do. He always yells and throws things when angry. Fearing such a husband, I had complied with everything he said up until now. Yes, just like a slave. But that was only until today. I've been preparing to bring this good-for-nothing down to hell. What are you talking about? My firm words made my husband falter for a moment. He must have never dreamed that I would talk back. However, he quickly returned to his usual expression. A slave shouldn't talk back. You're my property. Your father isn't watching right now, so I can say whatever I want. Get the apology letter ready if you understand. A slave? Who do you think you're talking to? I'm not writing any apology letter. Faced with my refusal, my husband finally lost it. You think I don't care what happens to my position at the company? Your lifestyle depends on my job. It's thanks to me that a slave like you can live in such a nice house and eat good food. Do you understand that? If you don't write an apology, then let's get a divorce. You sure you can say that? You're gonna regret it. My non-compliance, unlike usual, only increased my husband's anger. How are you planning to live if you leave me? You can't live on your housewife's playtime working. If you're without me, you'll end up on the streets. You'll regret it. My husband's favorite line came out. The condescending attitude that because he works, he is superior. The outdated idea that because he works, he is better than me. In fact, I wanted to continue working after marriage. The fulfillment and satisfaction from working and earning can only be found through work. I loved my job and was needed at my workplace. However, I listened to my husband's wish that he really wanted me to quit my job and take care of the home, and I became a stay-at-home wife. I loved my husband and wanted to support him. But my husband trampled all over my feelings without a care. He thinks only of himself and sees me as nothing more than a convenient housekeeper, no, a slave. Staying with this person would only make me unhappy. I didn't marry to become his slave. I can't forgive him, I'm determined to get revenge. And so, I made my final preparations, waiting for my father's arrival. About 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang, signaling my father's arrival. He must have rushed over, as he seemed out of breath on the camera. Before my father entered the living room, my husband gave me a final warning. You got everything prepared, right? Yes, I've got everything prepared. I quietly answered, looking into John's eyes. Father entered the living room and sat down on the sofa. John and I sat opposite him. Let's hear a clear explanation about what happened earlier. My father's commanding voice made John shiver. It's not what you think, Dad. There's been a misunderstanding. What's misunderstood? Explain it to me in a way that I can understand. My father's anger grew as John offered no apologies. Emily wants to explain about earlier. After all, I'm not the one at fault. It's Emily who's to blame for neglecting the housework under the guise of working. Show him what you prepared, Emily. Prodded by John, I took what I had prepared. If my father scolded, it was supposed to be me apologizing. John, thinking I held an apology letter, smirked in satisfaction. Dad, I have something I want to show you. I spread out the documents on the table. John's expression changed instantly. What is this? What I spread on the table was a divorce paper. I'd found a lawyer. You said, if you don't write an apology letter, let's divorce, right? So, I prepared the divorce papers. You said that to my daughter? Really, what kind of person are you? John panicked, faced with an unexpected turn of events. It's not like that. I didn't mean it like that. I just wanted to teach Emily a lesson for neglecting her duties and talking back to me. Besides, Emily's salary wouldn't cover living expenses, right? Just working like it's some housewife's hobby won't maintain our stable lifestyle. I don't want to see you struggling, Emily. Just take a moment to cool off and think. John looked at me with a supposedly concerned face. But I was no longer fooled. This was just superficial kindness. My husband, who is approachable and has good manners, is considered kind and dependable by society. I too thought the same until we got married, and I was drawn to such a husband. But now, I know his true nature. Kind only in appearance, he truly only cared about himself. He would hurt others without a second thought if it served his interests. I refuse to be his slave any longer. Working from home is just a housewife's hobby? I'm your slave? Ridiculous. Remembering all the times he mistreated me, my anger surged. I shoved my pay stubs in front of John's face. A hobby like working? Can't live off that, you say? Take a look. My salary has long surpassed yours, hasn't it? Seeing the pay stubs, John turned pale. My salary far exceeded his. I could live comfortably on my earnings alone. Unable to comprehend, John fell silent, my anger unabated. What now? Can you still say working from home is just a housewife's hobby? Can you manage to earn this much and also handle all the housework? I don't think so. You're already overwhelmed with your job, let alone housework. Go on, say it. Who would be troubled by a divorce? I certainly won't be. I've got a decent income, and I manage the housework just fine. But how can this be? Why? John shook his head, unable to accept the truth. He had always dismissed my work as mere housewife's play. He never imagined that I was earning more than him. I've been helping out at Dad's company as he requested. After we got married, you changed completely, treating me not as a partner but as a slave to take care of you. You demanded perfection from me while doing nothing at home yourself. Bring your own underwear and towels to the bathroom. Don't be so spoiled. Stop making me do everything. What are you saying? It's normal for a stay-at-home wife to do that much. My husband, unaccustomed to me talking back, was clearly shaken. Don't be ridiculous. I'm not your slave. I wanted to be seen as an individual, as a partner. Because you were like that, I was preparing for independence, considering divorce as a given. I kept it hidden from you, especially since you'd casually say, working from home is just a housewife's hobby. I also heard about the situation from Emily. At first, I couldn't believe it because my impression of you was of a kind and competent man. But after seeing the messages where you were blaming my daughter, I began to doubt your character. That's why I advised her to prepare for a divorce. Just starting a divorce out of the blue would put my daughter at a disadvantage. So, I told her to become financially independent first before considering divorce. Hearing my father's words, John buried his head in his hands. If disowned by my father, his position in the company would become precarious. He must be worried about that. He started making desperate excuses, but it was too late. So, that was the situation, huh? But, Dad, as I said before, it's a misunderstanding. I've never treated Emily as a slave. Today was just an accident. There were various things at work. I came home exhausted and Emily hadn't done any housework, just sitting at her computer. I just snapped. Emily has often neglected housework, claiming she's working from home. I was just trying to give her a small lesson. Normally, I do help with the housework too. And our marital relationship is good, right, Emily? While he said this, he tried to grab my hand, but I brushed it off. Listening to his disjointed excuses made me want to laugh. What kind of nonsense are you spouting? Just today? You're doing housework? Stop joking. Can you still say that after seeing this? I thrust a notebook at John. It was the household ledger he had when he splashed beer on me today. Actually, this wasn't a ledger I was keeping at his request, but a notebook where I recorded his bullying. It detailed how he treated me like a slave. I had to prepare meals and clean the bathroom to match John's return time. No matter how late John came home, I couldn't eat or take a shower before him. I had to be by his side pouring drinks while he ate. If I broke any of the meticulous rules he set, he would fly into a rage and blame me persistently. Being hit by thrown objects or drenched in beer was an everyday occurrence. By the way, John himself never touched the ledger. He never checked its contents. To him, making me keep a ledger was meaningless, just one of the ways to bully his wife. So, John was unaware of what was written in it. And now, reading the notebook that recorded his misdeeds, John turned pale and lost his words. "Hey, you see this? Should I read it for you?" Today, he threw a beer bottle at me because he came home early, and dinner wasn't ready. Blood came out from where it hit my forehead, but he just laughed. Planning to go to the hospital tomorrow. The scar from that time is still there. Want to hear more? No, that's enough. By the way, I've shown this to Dad. Was it the day before yesterday? You yelled at me to quit working immediately. Next time I find out, you won't get away with it. I told Dad about that. He was worried, so we had a video call today to expose your true nature. Such a thing! John tried to continue making excuses, but he couldn't find the words and fell silent. Do you have anything to say? Well, I'm not inclined to listen to your excuses anymore. In front of my father's sarcastic gaze, John shrank and turned pale. The fact that you've been unreasonably bullying Emily is an undeniable truth. The notebook Emily kept is evidence, and I saw it with my own eyes today. Moreover, you've been spreading lies as if Emily were to blame, deceiving everyone around you. Do you realize how foolish that is? Father's yelling filled the living room. John must have realized that no more excuses would work. He stood up from the sofa. I'm terribly sorry. It's all true. Please forgive me. But it was too late for that. My father coldly said to John, such actions will not excuse what you've done. You'll have to atone for the pain you've caused Emily. I'll report your true nature to your company. Appropriate action will be taken. Upon hearing my father's words, John finally broke down and cried. Please, spare me that. If the company finds out, I'll lose my position. Even now, after all that, John's words showed he was only thinking of himself. I was utterly disgusted. Please, I beg you. Come on, Emily, plead for me too. We're a couple, aren't we? What are you talking about? I have no intention of continuing this marriage with you. And it's useless to ask Dad for anything. I scoffed at John. After all, he was just this kind of person. He only thinks about himself, lashing out at weaker individuals. When he realizes someone is stronger, he quickly changes his attitude and starts groveling. He chose me as a marriage partner because he thought I would be docile and submissive. Thinking about how I've been oppressed and hurt by such a husband brought fresh anger. I decided to confront John with my final card. You always claim to be a competent person, but it seems that's not the case. You've been buttering up your superiors and bossing around your colleagues, right? Moreover, you've been pawning off your own work on them and stealing all the credit, haven't you? What? Emily? That's news to me. I haven't heard of such a thing. My father opened his eyes wide in surprise. Yes, I hadn't told you yet because the investigation was still ongoing. But what I said earlier is true. You know a relative who works at the same company, right? There has been a whistleblower from that relative. It seems several subordinates have been overburdened with an insane amount of work, leading to continuous overtime. They said if the work wasn't finished, they'd get yelled at and constantly berated by him. Apparently, many of his colleagues have either fallen ill from stress or quit because of him. When we looked into it, his true nature was revealed. It seems he's the only one who thinks he's competent. The company has had a poor opinion of him for a while now. The people at the company had already begun to realize his true nature, and his misdeeds are already known among our relatives. They all said they're cutting ties with him. You are such a terrible person. John began to tremble as he realized all his misdeeds were exposed. Even in such a state, he clung to me. Emily, I was wrong. Please, just not a divorce. Speak on my behalf to the company. If things stay this way, I won't be able to survive there. If I get fired, you know, you'd be in trouble too, right? Please, I'm begging you. You brought all this on yourself. I have nothing to do with it anymore. I'm done being treated like a slave. Whether you get fired or end up homeless, I don't care. We're getting divorced, so just sign the divorce papers quickly. You're going to live on my own from now on. I threw my final words at John, who could only think of himself. John moved his mouth as if to say something, but no words came out. Following my declaration, the divorce was finalized. A skilled lawyer hired by my father handled the divorce proceedings, and John, having given up, reluctantly signed the divorce papers. John, who treated his wife like a slave and stole credit from his colleagues, was fired from his company after his actions were exposed. He managed to find a job at a smaller company but caused trouble there too. The essence of my self-centered husband didn't change. He boasted about working for a large company and acted arrogantly towards his colleagues. He has since moved from job to job, each time causing trouble and being fired, spiraling downward. As for me, I've been liberated from chores that felt like obligations and am enjoying a relaxed lifestyle for the first time in a while. My work is going well. With no restrictions from John, I've added some days to go into the office in addition to my work. Actually, meeting colleagues makes work more efficient, and casual conversations can lead to work-related insights. Dad, thank you for everything. I really wanted to show you a grandchild, but I'm sorry. I spoke to my father's back in the living room of my childhood home. The most important thing is your happiness. You're still young. There will be plenty of opportunities ahead. I just want you to be happy. My father turned around and replied with a smile. After such a painful and difficult marriage, I'm not ready for another one anytime soon. But if I were to marry again, I'd want to be with someone who sees me not just as a wife, but as a woman.